Welcome to another episode of Medicine 3.0, your place for AI in medicine, precision medicine. And this week, I've got Andrew Fisher. He is one of our Bionic Health members, and this is the second in series of Bionic Health members who want to tell their story. And Andrew was kind enough to sit down with me and talk through his health journey and his struggle with weight over the years and how he's been able to transform his body, transform his life and his mind. So I really think you're going to enjoy listening to Andrew's story. All right, Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jared. Thanks for having me.
You bet. To start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I am 48 years old. I am a native of Maine. I lived in New Jersey for a few years and then ended up here in North Carolina back in 2007. So now it's, like 17 or 18 years that I've been a North Carolina resident. So I really feel like this is home now. I'm a lawyer by profession. I've been practicing about 20 years now. But I've also started a couple of companies, I'm a lawyer who practices in the entrepreneurship area. And so I think I kind of got the entrepreneurship bug and from all the folks that I worked with. And so, your partner, Robbie Allen, was my partner for a while in a legal tech startup called Startomatic a couple of years back. But I have continued practicing corporate and startup law sort of throughout that time. People also always love to hear that I started a retail cupcake bakery here in the Triangle of North Carolina. So opened a small cupcake shop in Durham and one in Cary. Also owned that for about 5 years until just before the pandemic. I guess sort of health-wise, because Bionic is obviously all about health. I grew up pretty active and, fairly healthy. I didn't have any major health issues as a child or a teenager or in college. I played a lot of sports. I played ice hockey, I did swimming and soccer, and I switched to lacrosse in middle school. I played lacrosse throughout middle school and high school, played ice hockey in high school. I played football for a couple of seasons. And I wrestled one season, which was actually the hardest sport that I think I ever did. So I was always very active, at least through high school anyway. My main health concern when I was younger was my weight. I was always, a bigger kid, a heavier kid. And that was something that definitely, weighed on me a little bit, no pun intended. So has been, a concern or a part of my health background for as long as I can remember, really, since I was a little kid. I didn't do any athletics through college, and probably started to, see my health decline a little bit, even though, I was in my late teens and early 20s. And so should be some of the healthiest time of your life. But I was sort of sedentary. I studied and I drank too much and I ate too much and didn't move around enough. And so my health probably was not what it should have been at the time. Your metabolism is still pretty high, so it wasn't really affecting me. But it was affecting me, but it wasn't that noticeable until I think by the time I sat for the bar. I had my weight was up to 275 pounds. That's as heavy as I got. And it was not 275 pounds of muscle. It was 275 pounds of, sitting around and eating pizza from the pizza store that was downstairs from my apartment. And when I was in law school, which was a terrible and wonderful thing to have, right next door to me.
Right.
So, I think sometime around then when I got my first job, I got out of law school. I got my first job in a law firm in 2004. And I was probably at my least healthy. But a couple of years in from then, I think I realized once I had sort of settled down, I got married, had a job and some income and and no kids, and realized, all right, I need to start doing something. So I started running a little bit, was what the first thing that I kind of got into. I'd never really liked running when I was younger, even though I played a bunch of sports that required running, but I was not like a distance runner. So I started doing that in a couple of years after college. Got into that a little bit and, lost some weight and got into a little bit better shape overall, got more interested in watching my diet and understanding how that impacted, how I felt in general. but I was still a pretty young guy, and my metabolism could keep up with it, and I had lots of energy and all of that good stuff. So I stuck with running for a long time. I ran a couple of half marathons. I was running more or less, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week, probably. Got myself back into somewhat better shape. I was still, not a skinny guy, right? But I was at least, cardiovascularly fairly fit. I started doing some yoga around then, probably 2007, right when I moved to North Carolina. I found yoga through P90X, actually, but I did find it very cool, and I'm naturally fairly flexible, and so it felt like a good fit at the time, and so I started doing more yoga and got more interested and excited about it, and I do yoga today. I think it's probably, of the exercise that I do, it's probably the most useful, most I don't know. I guess maybe it's, I don't know, kind of the gentlest and most helpful to staying in good shape long term. I think, yoga is it's good for mental fitness and physical fitness and flexibility and all that stuff that's really important as we start to age. I went so far as to take a yoga teacher training class. So back in 2007. So I'm a registered yoga teacher, a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. I haven't taught much. I did teach for a little while at a gym that I used to go to, but I haven't taught recently. Right now, I find I just enjoy, about once a week trying to get to a yoga class to mix in with the other physical activity that's my primary hobby and physical activity now, which is CrossFit. I started that when I was about 40, so 8 years that I've been doing that. I kind of had, it's been around longer than that, and I was aware of it, but it had a reputation, still has a reputation as sort of high impact and causing a lot of injuries, and I wasn't super excited about that, even though I did like the competitive nature and the way that programs are built. At least I thought I did. And then when I started doing it 8 years ago, I found that I did really like it. I mean, I liked showing up someplace and being told what to do, and then having a competitive and supportive competitive environment around, and that was really useful to me for as far as keeping me motivated and keeping me excited about working out. And in terms of physical fitness, that was the what really brought me to the best level of physical fitness I've been in, at least since high school, and probably even fitter than I was, even when I was playing 3 sports every year, and running a lot for lacrosse, and I have more muscle and more endurance probably now than I did even when I was in high school or at the end of my high school athletic career. So that's been really really useful, and I still go 3 to 4 or sometimes 5 days a week. I'll be at CrossFit.
Did you feel like when you found CrossFit, you'd done all these competitive sports when you were younger? Was it more the competition or the different types of movements? What kind of pulled you in that made you keep going?
There was a sense of community and competition together. I think that was probably it, right? I made some really good friends at my first gym, which I'm not at anymore, but I still keep in touch with them. Robbie Allen was the reason I met him was through CrossFit, right? We were at the same gym, and so that was a great connection, and being able to be with people who were your friends and all sort of generally in the same stage of life. Now I'm on the older end of the people at my gym, but still everybody's there for kind of the similar reasons. And then sort of seeing how you stack up and being able to push each other in a friendly way is really helpful, I think. So I've only done a couple of actual competitions, so that, CrossFit has a any given weekend, there are a few local competitions, really anywhere in the country. I think I've only done a couple of those, and those are fun, but it's like an all-day commitment and that kind of thing. So I don't really, I wouldn't call myself a competitive CrossFitter, but I do like the competitive nature that's built into the programming, and you put your score in, into the app, and you can see where you fall and see how you're doing, in comparison to other people, which is it's a motivating factor. It's not for everybody, that's for sure. And it's not like there's no taunting, there's no, there's no, except among very good friends, maybe who maybe, give each other a little bit of a hard time. But for the most part, it's a lot of fist bumps and cheering each other on and trying to get everybody to do their best. So I really enjoy that collaborative community nature of the sport.
Yeah. Well, you've had, I mean, other than the years of college and law school, it sounds like you've had really a pretty active lifestyle and it's been a part of your life. How, during those years, obviously when you're younger, you don't think about your health very much, but how did you more broadly think about health as time went on?
Yeah, in the negative, I guess, right? I just, you notice things that aren't as good as they were when you were younger. So energy levels started to drop for me in my early 40s, probably. I would say was when I really started to notice it. You also have, if you're in your 40s, you probably got parents in their 60s, 70s. And so you're starting to see the impacts of their health and life choices and obviously, and just the impacts of disease and aging on them. My mom actually died when I was just out of college. She had breast cancer that was metastasized. She lived with it. She was diagnosed when I was in first grade. I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
And she lived with it for 20 years through surgeries and lots of different procedures and chemotherapies and all kinds of stuff. She was a tough woman, but still, she died. So she died when I was 26, probably just a couple of years out of college. And there'd been some other cancer in my family, and then my father just passed away last year, a year ago, December.
I'm
And
sorry.
thank you, thanks. Yeah, he had cancer also and a few other health problems, some joint problems and things, and he wasn't as healthy into his 70s and early 80s as I want to be when I am that age, and he really didn't move around very much anymore, and his mobility was limited. I mean, it's a common story, I think, for a lot of people, but that I took a look at him, not in any one moment, but just in general, and thought to myself, is this what I want to be like when I'm in my 80s? And I would rather be able to really, be able to move around well under my own power and pick up my grandkids and do things like put my own bag into the overhead bin on the airplane, right? And so that's, that time of life, so mid 40s, I guess the midlife time is when you start to recognize your own mortality a little bit more than you did in your 20s and 30s. And so that obviously brought the focus back onto my health, and add into that the general, nationwide better understanding of the importance of diet and exercise to living a long and healthy life. I can read the news and read all the studies and see that what makes people happy into their later life is being able to do the things that they did when they were younger and being able to be full participants. So that's why it really became important to me.
Yeah. Well, there's so many studies now that tell us about longer, healthier, happier lives. And I think you spoke to several things that you've incorporated into your life currently that are super useful. One is a community and CrossFit and those relationships. And obviously you've named several friends. I don't know if Robbie's a good friend. I mean, he's an okay friend, but, but yeah, those friendships, that sense of community, that's super important. And then moving your body and staying healthy. So I think that's great as you've gone through kind of, not really thinking about health to then seeing the negative. How have you evolved your thinking about to where you are now, kind of in your health journey?
So first, it's like the first step in change it all. You have to identify that there is a problem, and so I think I had actually identified the problem. Well, one of the main problems I think early in my life, which was my weight and my diet, which I have tried. I sound like one of the weight loss commercials, right? But I had at some point during my life tried more or less every diet out there, and I'm not like a guy who was like, oh, I'm going to do this diet or that diet, but Um, I did certainly do. Let's see. I was on Weight Watchers probably for some short period of time, and these all sucked. By the way, all of these
Yeah.
diets were terrible. None of them worked. They're all awful. I think I tried Nutrisystem, and that was like eating cardboard that they shipped to you in the mail. It was terrible. I did a diet called the pineapple diet, which was like the weirdest. What is like you eat like it's enzyme based. This was probably in my late 20s actually, because I was hovering in the 250-pound range, probably, something certainly, high percentage body fat, probably clinically obese for a lot of that time, even though I was active, right? So when I was running and doing things that were fairly active, playing rugby and things, I would still say I think I was probably clinically obese. Um, None of those diets worked. The ones that were the best actually were the sort of Mediterranean focused ones. The South Beach diet actually I stuck with for longer, and all of them, you lose some weight, but then there's always a backsliding. There's always a return to old habits. And whether that's, your body seeking its return to the set point, or, everybody always said it's lack of willpower, right? It's just, if you can just eat less and move more, right? That was the mantra for so long, right? And that it's a personal failing if you're not able to lose the weight. And now I think there's a huge sea change in understanding of what causes people to be overweight. And so when I heard about Bionic, right, through Robbie and met you, it was the right thing at the right time for me. It was sort of thinking, well, I'm doing all this exercise. I'm conscious of my diet, but I'm not able to sort of regulate it the way that I would want to. And Bionic says, well, here's our approach is going to be to look at you holistically in a way that current medicine does not. So we'll not only look at, are you exercising? We will look at what your diet is, but we'll also look at what your hormone levels are, what supplements we can recommend to bring your metabolic health back into towards an ideal. We'll look at your sleep patterns. We will look at your blood chemistry, your glucose levels, and we'll do it in a level of detail that no primary care physician does for you. I think I remember a couple of times going for my physical to my PCP in my probably early 40s and saying, well, I'm not as energetic as I was, a few years ago. I'm tired a lot of the time. Yes, I have 3 little kids, and so maybe that's part of it. And, that was sort of the answer I always got was, well, yeah, you're just in that stage of life. You're getting older. You're not going to have as much energy. You have 3 kids. It will get better. There's not much to do. Your numbers generally look pretty good. Your blood pressure is reasonably, within range. It's not super high. I don't remember getting a whole bunch of blood work done at the time where they could really dig in and look and see, okay, are there things that we should address now that maybe aren't obvious problems, but could crop up in the future. And so when I heard and read about what you guys were doing at Bionic, it seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And then I read, I think it was before I started Bionic, I read Outlive, the book, Adia's book. And that hit on all of the things that I had seen, so cancer, what can we do to avoid, I've got a family history of cancer. What can I do to try to avoid getting cancer in the future? Alzheimer's, metabolic disease and diabetes. How can I avoid getting diabetes in the future? And so having the resource like Bionic, which is one person or group of people who are going to say, all right, Andrew, we're going to look at you from start to finish, and we're going to gather all the data. And I am a science believer, and which is a crazy thing to have to say, but I'm a science believer, and the more data we can get and analyze and put into practice with the best practices that we know of now in medicine, the better off I'm going to be. And so that's why it seemed to make so much sense to me. And it did. I'm on a bunch of supplements which have changed my blood chemistry for the better significantly, and then there are medications that I'm taking that my PCP never even crossed his lips, right, to say, hey, you should think about this for your cholesterol. You should think, even though my cholesterol was just slightly elevated, it wasn't terrible. But if we can bring that down to a very good level, you're going to reduce your risk of dying from, heart-related disease in 30 years. And so let's look at that 30-year time horizon and see what we can do now to address those problems in the future. And then testosterone is another, big one that I'm on now, which I had sort of before Bionic, I had thought, and, there's a lot of chatter in the media about testosterone, right? There's a lot of people advertising testosterone to men my age. And so it comes across in the limited social media feeds that I have, it comes across there, but you also you see it on TV, right? And they advertise it during football games, right? So I actually got it tested before Bionic again, and it was sort of normal range, but low normal. And most doctors aren't prescribing, they're saying, well, you're in the normal range, so nothing to be done, right? But at Bionic, it was, the approach was, well, if you don't feel good, even though it's in the quote unquote normal range, maybe we should try changing something and see if that makes a difference. And so it did. My energy level went up. My libido went up for sure, and that was all great. My wife is thankful. And that's been a really helpful change. And so my testosterone is not like above normal now. It's just medium to high normal. It's like where you would think someone my age should be. So I don't feel crazy. I'm not like, giant, I'm not taking a bunch of anabolic steroids or anything, but I did gain, muscle in the last, in the year analysis between my first body scan and next body scan, I gained 8 pounds of muscle. So that's with CrossFit staying the same, right? So I've been doing the lifting, the weight bearing exercises and all that stuff. And like I said, before Bionic, I was still as fit as I'd been, or more fit than I'd been in high school. But now I've added on to that. I've gained the muscle, which, I know you've talked about is so important as the currency of aging, right? The more muscle you can bring into your 70s and 80s, the better off you'll be. And then the other piece that's been really important is also in the news all over the place right now is the GLP-1 that I'm on now. So I've lost 40 pounds on tirzepatide, and that was, so I lost 40 pounds net, but that includes gaining 8 pounds of muscle in the scan. So I've probably lost 50 pounds of fat-ish, gained 10 pounds of muscle, right? So net loss of 40 pounds. That's a huge difference in just how I feel in my body composition. And I think, the GLP-1s are, and I was just listening to a podcast on this today, and the doctor said game change. He said, what was the discussion that they asked this doctor, what was the discussion like in the medical community when these started, hitting the markets? And he said it's a game changer, and it was known that it was a game changer. And he said there are something like 100, derivatives, new GLP-1s in the pipeline right now from these companies. Right. So I think we are at the cusp of a total change in how obesity and just overweight conditions are treated in the country, which is really interesting to be, at the forefront of that.
Yeah. And I think it's such an interesting time. You'll hear some people deride GLP-1s and they go back to that same equation that you said, right? Like eat less, move more, like, why can't you just do this? And I think for so many people, including yourself, like you were doing everything right, and yet you still couldn't do what you wanted to. And to have a medication that pushes you over the edge, and your outcomes are absolutely amazing. Like losing that much fat and gaining muscle. I mean, these aren't outcomes that you're going to get just like on accident. You have to be very directed in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so I think that's so cool about your story.
Yeah. I mean, I recognize how lucky I am. I mean, just extremely lucky. So CrossFit is not an inexpensive sport, and it also is time intensive. And so not everybody has the ability to do that. The GLP-1s are expensive. There's no question about it. Although I think that is going to change. I hope that will change, because it is something, it's not fair. Number one, that only people who can afford to pay for it can get it. And it's stupid from a national health policy standpoint not to make those available when the costs of all kinds of obesity, in this country are so high. The direct medical costs of people being so overweight are so high that we should just redirect some of that cost to GLP-1s or similar drugs that are effective. I don't know. I'm not a health economist, but I would guess that it will cost less to put for federal health programs to pay for these drugs than to pay for the results of obesity on the back end. So anyway, I feel lucky to be at the forefront of of this change. I think it will change the mentality also around people's weights and a big part of their healthiness, their health component that everybody has. I think the fact that you can just put people on this drug and just tweak the brain chemistry around appetite and satiety will really make everyone understand that, hey, what we were dealing with here is not a lack of willpower or a moral failing, but an actual disease of chemistry that can be addressed with modern medicine.
Yeah. And I think it's such a relief for those who experience it, right? Like the constant chatter, the thinking about having to fight yourself, whether you're going to eat or what you're going to eat, and that relief, I hear it from so many people that we take care of. Like that relief is worth so much.
I feel like I have a window into the world of a whole other kind of person that I never knew about before, right? That people who were, who didn't overeat, who wouldn't, just feel like they needed to have, an after dinner snack of ice cream and cookies and had to eat donuts, every Saturday morning or whatever it was. The people who could just say, well, maybe I'll have one donut and this weekend, and next weekend I won't, or people who could sort of have that facility with not giving in to the cravings because they didn't have those cravings, and so now that chatter, that food noise, is so reduced that it's like a crazy, like I said, a window into what other people's minds have been like for so long. And of course they could stay relatively fit and skinny and not have a problem eating a lot of food because their brain isn't telling them all the time, you need to get some simple sugars in yourself, which my brain always seemed to be telling me.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is great that you pointed out was that in part of your health journey was fixing your hormones and figuring that out. And I always find it so interesting because, again, people try to like moralize this thing. They say, well, that's cheating, and we're talking about if somebody came in and they had testosterone at the 75th percentile, we wouldn't lower their testosterone. We wouldn't say, hey, that's cheating, or that's too much testosterone, we're going to lower your testosterone. But yet, if you're living at the 20th percentile, and we have all this data that says you're a higher likelihood to have metabolic disease and heart disease and all these things, like, why wouldn't we like raise you up to a level that is better and that you feel better at? And I think that your story is like a great picture of like moving somebody from a low end to a high end and having some really great results.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, as long as it's done, with supervision, good medical supervision, and with intent and follow up, right?
Yep.
Then you're really, there's no reason not to. Right? I mean, so I went on a statin when I started at Bionic, got my labs checked periodically, and it was like 9 months later, my labs were down. So I've come off the statin. So the idea is, I can get to the point with as many sort of quote unquote natural remedies as possible to get myself off of the drugs if I can, and that's a goal of mine. I'd rather not be on a lot of medications if I don't have to be, just for the chances of side effects. But as long as I'm paying attention to how do I feel, are there any side effects, and there's a doctor helping me every step of the way, then that's definitely better to take the chance that there will be side effects. And if there are, you take a look at them and then weigh them. Is that worth the benefit that I'm getting out of this drug or not? With the understanding that, yes, we're going to do whatever we can to try to get off of these drugs eventually. And that may never happen. And that's fine, because the benefit of them may outweigh whatever downside there is of being on them. And I have been, again, very lucky. I've had very few side effects, or if any, from any of these treatments. So I feel lucky, but hopefully someone else would be in the same situation.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really useful for people to hear stories. That humans, we love stories. We make up our own stories. Like we imagine we know other people's stories. And so I really appreciate you being willing to share your story with other people.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I hope, if somebody hears this who was in the situation that I was in, where they're cognizant and they're willing to do the things that it takes to be the healthy, happy, feeling good version of themselves, that they will, they will give it a shot. Whether it's through Bionic or someone else, there are remedies out there, right? There are ways to address these problems. That is not giving up. It's not cheating. It's not anything like that. It's just taking advantage of what we know in modern medicine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah. Happy to do it. Thanks, Jared.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Medicine 3.0. We make this podcast so that you know where to turn for good information on keeping you and your loved ones healthy. Feel free to check us out at bionichealth.com, where we can help you live a longer, happier life.